Hey there, my name is Ali Serag, aka the Flow Bro, and today I'm super excited to introduce you to the Flow blockchain here at ETH Singapore. At Flow, I work as an outbound product manager, but previously I've done everything from full stack engineering to product management and even launched a couple startups in the process, so the whole gambit. In university, I studied computer science, but also participated in dozens of hackathons, which contributed to 95% of my wardrobe in terms of swag, but also gave me a lot of opportunities to explore new ideas, to build entrepreneurial skills, and to think about what does the world look like when you actually solve real pains. My advice for you during this hackathon, whether you choose to hack in our stream or another stream, is related to a very famous quote attributed to Arthur C. Clarke. You might have heard about it. It goes something like, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. It kind of even goes deeper than that. The etymology of the word magic comes from the Indo-European word mag, which means to be able. Technology is the only thing that if you spend several days of creativity, of effort, of passion, you can create something that enables millions of people, billions of people even. So if there's one thing I want you to take away, it's that you are a wizard during this hackathon. I know it sounds funny, but it's true in the literal sense of the word, in that you're making magic in people's lives, you're enabling them. And don't think of it like, oh, I'm just going to explore this tool stack or play around with this idea. Really try to look at real pains that people face and how you could enable them through the process of hacking. Back to the agenda, I'm going to talk about what is Flow, our architecture, introduce you to Cadence and what the future of Web3 development looks like with Flow. Then I'm going to talk about our DeFi Toolbox, the hacking themes for ETH Singapore, and give you a very brief demo. Flow has just gone through the most exciting and largest upgrade in its history. And I'm about to share with you some exciting alpha so that together we could explore what the future looks like. Before that, let's start off with a little bit of a story. Imagine that you have a friend that hears about the super cool Web3 game. And they're not Web3 native. They haven't went through all of the tumultuous torture that we've went through. So they go to the application. First thing they notice, this beautiful box in the top right that says connect wallet. It's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, is that how I sign in? Then they click on it and they get redirected to a plugin store. They have to download a plugin. Okay. They start onboarding into that plugin. They're like, is this a scam? What's going on? And then they're told, memorize this series of words, but don't write them down on your computer or Microsoft Word. Make sure you physically write them down and don't ever lose it, or else you could lose your money. By that time, you're probably panicking. You've already spent like a considerable amount of time before you even log into the game, but you still go along with it. And then eventually you're able to create that wallet. You connect into the game. You're not able to do a single transaction in that game because you don't have any gas. So what is gas fees? Where do I buy it from? Your friends aren't around. You try to find a centralized exchange. Is this taxes for Web3? What is this? Like, why is this so expensive? Where do I get it from? Right? If you're in Canada, you're probably going to have to wait 3 hours with the fraud department before you can convince them that you are in fact trying to make that crypto transaction. Realistically, the vast majority of users would have dropped off before they even started having fun and playing the game. The whole purpose of games is to have fun, but the reason I gave this analogy was because there are massive barriers towards everyday consumers, towards mainstream users to get onboarded even into the most simple Web3 applications. It's not very user-friendly, right? And at the protocol level, Flow gives builders the tools that they need to effortlessly remove all these barriers to using your dApp. Does your grandmother really need to know what a crypto wallet is? Or does your friend really need to go and grab all that gas just to play around with you and their other friends? A second thing that I want to touch on that is another huge barrier to everyday people getting involved in these Web3 applications is gas, right? So on Flow, you can also create applications that allow the application itself to pay gas fees instead of the end user to effectively create these gasless experiences, which is a huge other barrier. Solves both of them, all while guaranteeing a full spectrum of ownership. The end user always has full control of their assets. Before I get into the specifics of how that's done, Let's discuss Flow a little bit more. So Flow is a layer 1 blockchain with ultra-low gas fees that first launched its proof-of-stake protocol in 2020. It was co-founded by Dieter Shirley, one of the brightest minds in the space and a core contributor to ERC 721. He is, as a tidbit of fun information, also the person that coined the term NFT. If you guys are OGs in the space, then you might have heard of CryptoKitties. The original team behind that also played an important role in the incubation of the network. On Flow, there are currently 2 virtual machines that run. One is Cadence and one is EVM. The EVM was recently introduced during Crescendo, which is the largest upgrade to ever occur on the network. And it essentially makes Flow an EVM equivalent blockchain. Well, what does that mean? It means that Solidity contracts and popular EVM tooling, such as Hardhat, Alchemy, Remix, OpenZeppelin, work off the bat seamlessly with no additional configuration required. It's as seamless as building on an L2 EVM chain, but with the extensive benefit of the technological advantages that Flow offers in creating new next-generation applications. Flow is also home to some of the world's most cherished communities and best brands, such as Disney, Mattel, the NFL, NBA. It's a network that really powers these dApps that are interacted with by millions of users. And in other words, it's pretty much the home of consumer applications that regular, everyday people love and use. Let's touch on the architecture. A blockchain network is a decentralized system maintained by a multitude of computers, known as nodes. These nodes are responsible for validating and recording transactions on the blockchain. Depending on the blockchain's architecture, nodes can have specific roles and responsibilities, such as validating transactions, storing data, or creating new blocks. Nodes are crucial in maintaining the integrity, the security, and decentralization of a blockchain network. In the current industry, when many of us think about scaling, L2s and app chains tend to come to mind. In fact, when you go to a lot of these crypto events, it seems like there are more chains than there are actually platforms or applications built on them. Jokes aside, Flow's created a unique network architecture that allows it as an L1 to scale without the need for sharding. On most other chains, the norm is for all nodes to perform every task like an army of clones, the exact same set of tasks. As network usage grows, the transaction processing capacity of the individual nodes becomes a limiting factor, restricting the network's throughput and latency. The amount of data that can be stored on-chain is limited since nodes have only a finite storage capacity. The only way to scale these monolithic blockchains is by increasing the capacity of each node by adding more CPU, more memory, and more storage. However, this has a cost. There's always a cost, and that cost is decentralization. As nodes scale vertically, they become more expensive to run, and eventually you're left with only a few operators that can afford to run such high-performance, high-capacity nodes. An oligarchy almost. So to say. And worst even is that energy consumption for every node in the network increases over time, making the chain environmentally unsustainable in the long run. The monolithic node design of common L1s, such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, overly privileges operator control over block production. This makes the chain vulnerable to censorship and NEV attacks, and this problem is even worse with L2s that have centralized sequencers. Flow's multi-role architecture provides MEV resistance by randomly assigning transactions to collection nodes that only see a subset of all transactions. What do I mean when I say multi-role architecture? Well, Flow essentially divides tasks among different specialized node types to enhance scalability and efficiency. On Flow, because the increase in energy and hardware consumption over time is restricted to a small subset of the nodes in the network instead of all of them, this dramatically limits the environmental footprint of the chain, while the overall energy use of Flow really doesn't increase significantly, even if the activity on-chain increases by 10, 50, 100x or more, making the per transaction energy footprint decrease over time. So EVM++, what is that? So with Cadence, you can extend EVM in a lot of really exciting ways. Cadence is not just a virtual machine, it's also the name of a Flow native programming language that was ergonomically designed for modern developers. In Web3, we build applications that constantly work with resources or assets such as fungible tokens, NFTs, and the 100 other ERCs out there. Cadence is a purpose-built, resource-oriented programming language designed with UX safety and functionality in mind. You can use Cadence to pretty much extend your EVM application, even if it's completely written in Solidity, and unlock extremely powerful use cases and value propositions. Over the next few slides, I'll try to give an overview of some of the most exciting things that I can think of that you can unlock on Flow by combining Cadence with your app. But I challenge you to think on your own and explore even new use cases that could really, change industries. We'll start with transactions because they're pretty much the lifeblood of on-chain activity. Transactions allow people to write data directly on-chain. Flow offers both competitive transaction times, which is important for apps in DeFi and gaming, but also offers different types of transactions in a completely new model. The model breaks down the signer into 3 roles: the proposer, the payer, and the authorizer. This allows things like sponsored transactions, where you can specify that the application is the one who is the payer. They pay for the gas fees, but the user is the one who proposes and approves the applications. And because gas fees are so ultra low on Flow, a lot of applications take advantage of this model to create completely gasless experiences for new applications coming in. One example that I recently saw was someone wanted to take all the benefits of drop shipping, if you're familiar with it, like remove all the cost barriers associated with it so people could launch new meme coins on the network. So they created a gasless token launcher platform. As you could imagine, like removing that barrier can open up a lot more use cases towards onboarding mainstream users that don't need to worry about going and buying that gas or can't access the application. It also opens up opportunities to introduce freemium and subscription models into your app. The second thing that I think it allows us to create, which I'm excited about, is bundled transactions. Bundled transactions are essentially when you add multiple transactions to execute in an order that if one of them fails, everything reverts. This is super useful if you have a super complicated DeFi application that the results of the previous transaction in an order are very important for the consecutive upcoming transaction. There's also multi-sig transactions where you could require a signature to have multiple signers in order to execute, which is super valuable for things like peer-to-peer trading in DeFi or in gaming, as well as escrows and scripted transactions, which essentially you could think of them almost like smart transactions, where you can set preconditions and post conditions for execution and create things like adaptive yield farming strategies, where you only go down one path if the price is right, if it at this moment in time is still better than alternative strategies, etc. Flow also offers a lot of protocol level primitives, and 2 ones that I'm super excited about and want to talk to you guys on are randomness and accounts. So Flow offers its own protocol level VRF, or verifiable randomness function, which allows applications to utilize provably fair number generators in things like games or lotteries or GambleFi that don't really need to rely on third-party oracles or alternatives. You can access this randomness through a precompiled Solidity contract called the Cadence Arc contract. And you could find more about that in the developer docs, or as well as the hackathon main page for Flow. I'm going to throw it into the resources section. So look there if you want to look more into incorporating that into your app. Another thing is account abstraction and account linking, which allows for shared ownership over accounts. So you could think of account linking on Flow like Google Drive folders. And in the same way how you might have one Google Drive folder have a nestled child folder within it, and the parent has certain, like your brother could access it, your mother could access it, but your sister can't access it. And the child folder, like it might inherit all the permission access to the contents within it, the assets, whether they're images or files, right? Like you could even have it at the asset level specified who has access to what. So you could think of account linking in a similar way, where by utilizing account abstraction, if an application, say, wanted to easily allow someone to onboard on it without having them go through a wallet creation process, in the background, they create a wallet for the end user. The end user just authenticates with their email like any other application, and that gets connected to that individual child account that the application created for them. Then maybe that user, 4 or 5 months down the line, they collect a bunch of assets like NFTs or tokens in that application. They go down the rabbit hole and they get their own non-custodial wallet, and they want to be able to link that account that was originally created in the application to their parent account, to their core wallet, right? That's possible on Flow at the protocol level, and it's so easy to implement. Attachments are an exciting area. A famous anon once might have said on Twitter that most devs in Web3 have attachment issues. They just don't know it yet. Truer words have never been spoken, in my opinion. Attachments are to smart contracts what modding is to video games. It affords the ability to add new data and functionality to a contract without permission from its original author. This fosters a new and unprecedented level of composability that I think really increases the shelf life of contracts and also allows them to adapt fast to changing market conditions. An analogy I love to give here is think about Skyrim, the RPG game. If you go onto platforms like Skyrim Nexus, you'll see millions of gamers are still downloading mods for this game that extend functionality far beyond what the original creators would have ever dreamed of, utilizing current tools like ChatGPT and Whisper AI to create things like NPCs that could talk to you and that are multi-dimensional. Really, what attachments allow you to do, in my opinion, that is so exciting is it allows you to turn your products into platforms. And these platforms continuously can generate value and iterate and change and new content for your users long into the future. Other examples of this could be like a SocialFi application adding a fact checker to people's posts, right? Or adding autographs on top of NFTs of sports stars. The possibilities really are endless. Metadata views on Flow is really exciting. It's also on the Cadence side. Essentially, it allows you to, at the asset level, associate metadata that helps with future proofing as well as future interoperability while guaranteeing backward compatibility. So an example of this might be royalties, right? Like you can set in the metadata of an NFT, hey, this royalty was created by this awesome creator, and this is the percentage of royalty payouts every time this gets sold that needs to go to this address. That means it doesn't matter if this NFT is sold in OpenSea or Blur. Wherever it's listed, it's pulling the exact same metadata. The front end of the application knows exactly how it should, render like that NFT, how people interact with it, etc. And you could imagine, like, fast forward 10 years, we have marketplaces for metaverse marketplaces where NFTs become these 3D rendered, like you get your wolf head NFT becomes a trophy you could mount on your palace wall, right? Like as these new standards evolve, metadata views allow you to evolve with the industry and with the evolving norms, right? So super exciting. Capabilities. They are a unique feature of Cadence that represent references to shared objects that can be saved for future transactions. And what they essentially do is they allow for granular permissions and access control. A good analogy for this is AWS IAM, where you could think of how that allows you to specify who has access to what, like functions, like what contract calls, like what parts of the contract at every single level. In the same way, this allows you to do that in Web3. Like I mentioned earlier, like you could mix this with sponsored transactions to do things like create freemium or subscription business models where if this user has done X, Y, and Z, they have access to this and so on and so forth. Or you could also create interesting applications relating to an inheritance application, right? If someone passes on and they have an account with a bunch of assets, you could have capabilities that allow their lawyer or their children to access specific assets within their account after a certain amount of time has elapsed if there's no activity in their account. Like capabilities allow you to access specific resources, specific functions in a contract, specific like anything that you need pretty much if you hit the required requirements and you have the capability to access those. Again, think of them as access control and permissioning. IAM is a very good analogy for it. So the DeFi Toolbox is your one-stop shop for everything DeFi related on Flow. Here you'll find code snippets, guides, examples, all the current primitives that are listed in the ecosystem, as well as ways for you as a developer to become more engaged on the Flow network. Again, like I hope that through this hackathon, it might be your first experience with Flow and that you'll choose to continue developing in the ecosystem in the future. If you choose to, well, what we've done is we've created a system where active developers can unlock more and more exciting things the more active they are, such as access to bounties, job opportunities, free tickets to future events similar to this, etc. So if you are interested in extending your hackathon project, continuing to work on it, or launching a new project post-hackathon, these toolboxes are the place that, like for various different verticals, will be the place for you to look for those types of opportunities and how to get more involved. So what are the two main themes for our stream at ETH Singapore? The two are most killer app potential. I could easily see how that could be misunderstood. And most DeFi app or best DeFi app on Flow, rather. What are killer apps? So killer apps have the power to create and lead entire industries by addressing a pain point at the perfect moment for a large group of people. Now, I already mentioned how Flow as an L1 is very focused on consumer adoption and consumer grade products that everyone can access. Like we work very hard to minimize and remove as many of the barriers as possible that people face when trying to access a Web3 application. So what I want you to think of when you're hacking in this stream is, what is the next thing that solves a real pain that a lot of people face? And it doesn't have to be completely like utility based. It could also be a Telegram mini app or a game. One analogy that I would give is artificial intelligence with ChatGPT. So with ChatGPT, AI has been around like decades and decades and decades before ChatGPT was ever a thing, right? Yet when ChatGPT was introduced, it was pretty much the fastest product that was ever adopted in history. What it allowed people to do is everyday people could instantly see the value it would create in their lives, and it became accessible to them through a chat interface that they were already familiar with from years of being on Snapchat, on Facebook, on WhatsApp. It was a medium that people were already comfortable with. A market was already there, and it solved a huge diverse array of pains, from grammar checking to tutoring to research that a huge segment of consumers uniquely found value in. So I would challenge you to think about what that kind of consumer application looks like in Web3. How do people currently try to solve marketplace problems, for example? Are there marketplace problems related to the gig economy that could be massively revolutionized with Web3? Maybe a cheaper Uber. Like, I don't mean to bias your solutions, but think big with the most killer app and really dive into what is the pains that you're solving. Why is Web3 perfect for solving that pains? and dream about what that solution might look like. The second one is best DeFi app on Flow, right? And what I would challenge you to think about for a best DeFi is, in DeFi, there's a lot of zero-sum game applications. What are the positive sum applications that continuously allow everyone from the investor to the user to the creator to grow together? Instead of you only making money by someone else being your exit liquidity, how can we all grow? How can we have tangible impact in the real world? What are different ways that everyday people are hedging against inflation, are investing today that could be massively disrupted through Web3 or their lives made easier? An example of a product that recently launched on Flow is essentially an RWA that tokenizes lease tokens and allows investors to get very decent returns of almost 18, 19%, which is a lot better than other stock options that they might be exposed to. But also it allows everyday people an easier method of getting approved for a car and then hitting the road faster. So what are massive industries or workflows or things that could really be improved through DeFi and cutting out those middlemen? All right, we have a little bit of time. I'm not going to do a full demo, but what I will do is show you where you can go to get started right now and deploy your first contract in the Flow ecosystem. So if you go to developers.flow.com and you click on the EVM section, the best place to get started, I'd recommend, is using EVM. It has everything you need, from this cute little button that will add Flow to your MetaMask, to information such as the chain ID, the RPC endpoint, and things like where to access the testnet faucet if you need test tokens or gas, and the block explorer for validating transactions and contracts. You can also see a list of all the JSON RPC methods that are currently available on Flow and more here. After that, I'd recommend going into the cross VM bridge. We'll be adding a little bit more to this. This is more useful if you plan to go down the path of leveraging some of those assets and brands and communities that I talked about earlier and bring them over from the Cadence side into the EVM side, into your application, and doing exciting, interesting things, or composing on top of them or extending them. This is going to be where you want to look to figure out how to best bridge over assets between the two virtual machines. Again, I really want to highlight, like in this hackathon, you don't have to touch anything related to Cadence. You could just do everything in Solidity, like on the EVM side, using tools that you're already familiar with. But I would challenge, if you are interested in exploring, thinking about interesting ways that you could leverage like the full potential of the platform. And then lastly, I think the easiest way to get started would just be going through the remix guide. There's various other guides that you'll find under the guides folder, and launching your first Hello World contract through the online IDE. That's it. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see what you guys cook up over the coming days. And as always, go with the flow.